Hello everybody, today we will be checking out a Sandy Bridge i5, specifically the i5-2320. We will be running it at about 3.1 GHz on all cores. It is not overclocked. You are able to overclock it. There is a slight unlocked multiplier on it. I do not have a board that can do that currently for Sandy Bridge. But first off, let's try out the Cinebench. This is a synthetic score. This is purely to see how your CPU can compare with others. It's very generic. So, so if you have something like the 2500K, for instance, you will be able to get a better score, and you will be able to overclock. If you have a higher clocked i5 Sandy Bridge, you will get a higher score as well. If you have a Sandy Bridge i5 that is clocked lower, your score will be slightly lower, although not that much probably. Overall, this video is going to be a quick little example of whether the Sandy Bridge i5 is still a decent CPU in more modern games. Some of these games are a bit older, but they did mostly come out past Sandy Bridge. I believe Starcraft came out around that time or before, CSGO came afterwards, and so did the current Battlefront game, which I have been using in all my other CPU tests. They're probably not the greatest games to CPU test, but they are great if you use them as a reference point compared to my old Phenom videos, and I will continue to use them and add more reference points in future videos. Now, we should see pretty good results with the i5 because Intel honestly has not innovated in the last few years, so we're not going to see that tremendous of a performance drop, most likely, compared to more modern i5s. There's still going to be a decent probably gap, but it shouldn't be that tremendous. And once again, I know a ton of people have i5 2500Ks that are highly overclocked, 4 plus gigahertz that are still going great. So if you have one of those, you should still be well off in anything. There's really not too much of a reason to upgrade. Okay, starting off with my favorite game, sort of similar, ones that I've uninstalled many times because of rage. It is CSGO. So overall, this game runs amazing. Wow, big surprise. Not really, actually. But yeah, it runs perfectly fine. Overall, the FPS was very high. I am using the same R9 270 and the 8 gigs of RAM as the other system did. I am also recording this in Fraps. If you're curious, the FPS and the averages were taken using Fraps as well. There was some odd stuttering I got, which I blame on my SSD running out of storage, and it seems to randomly slow down for some reason, but overall, that is not the CPU. It is merely Fraps being stupid. But it's CSGO, so you can run this on an Intel Atom, so not surprising. The FPS is good to compare, though, if you're comparing an older CPU. I do have the Athlon and the Phenom 4, and a dual-core Phenom that I tested out that you can compare the FPS to with this version of CSGO. If you're running any, for instance, like a Cabulix CPU or something, your FPS is probably going to be a little bit higher than max FPS, but it's really not going to make a difference. At this point, it's more of a GPU bottleneck than a CPU bottleneck. But yeah, and also I lost most of my great footage for CS:GO because Fraps is just stupid. And now moving on to a game which is much more CPU intensive, we have Starcraft II, a game which I believe came out before Sandy Bridge came out, so it is a bit older, but I'm still using it because it is quite CPU intensive. I'm running the same medium settings as I always do. You'll notice there will be stuttering. The stuttering is purely from good old SSD running out of storage, and my god, is it getting horrendous sometimes. But I also tried OBS, and OBS was just horrendous. OBS actually stuttered much worse for some reason, which is surprising because Fraps just loves being a memory hog, but somehow it was working better today. And also, one interesting thing to note was my FPS was actually the exact same on 1080p as it was on 4K. I'm not sure why that is. I reran the test twice. The 1080p one was reran twice, the 4K one 3 times. It was basically very similar, so I don't know exactly why. If you're curious what I was using to test this out, I was using a Desert Strike map. Also forgot to mention that the CSGO was recorded using the CSGO benchmark map, which you can find in the workshop if you look it up. And now moving on to a modern game, we have the new Star Wars Battlefront. This is currently running on the Frostbite engine, so it is a bit CPU intensive because we are also in a 40-player match. The game overall is a bit faster 4K compared to the Phenom that I had. It is definitely very, very playable. At 4K, you also do not need that great of a CPU. The higher the resolution, the less your CPU will technically matter, of course, depending on the game. But if you have an older CPU, fun fact, bumping up the resolution to as high as you can will sometimes help alleviate your FPS drops and help you out, as long as you, of course, have a good GPU. So if the CPU is the bottleneck, you can always increase your resolution to try and offset that bottleneck. Now, however, dropping it down to a lower resolution of 1080p provides a much higher FPS compared to the other Phenoms that I was testing and the Athlon. This is mainly due to the fact that, the SSD is freezing again. That's just great. Amazing, right? I love fraps. Anyway, so basically with the Phenom, we had horrendous unplayable FPS at 1080p. It was, I guess, somewhat playable, but not that great. But with this CPU at a lower resolution, you will actually get good frames. So, there you go. If you want to play at a lower resolution, your GPU is not that great, then it's very important usually to have a great CPU, because bumping down the resolution will increase the amount of strain that there will be on your CPU. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, favorite, and comment. And subscribe if you like the content. See ya.